Hello, this is Dan, Now Man, Nice Wonder. I'm going to read from this book, Do You Believe in Growth? Why Russia and China Keep Rising While U.S. Society Stifles Innovation. And I can say that I am an innovationist. If one wants to ask me what my, let's say, economic or political description would be as far as my ideas on policy and systemic change, which I think we desperately need here in the United States and other parts of the world too. And as the title implies, why are we stifling innovation? Why are we stifling growth in the United States? It makes no sense. Well, I'm going to read this book little bits at a time and eventually get through the whole book and share it with you online. First, the introduction. Growth is good. This should be common sense. It is completely healthy and normal to want to see things improve in your life. It is completely healthy and normal to want a more comfortable life, to provide better for your family, to see things in your community get better, and to take pride in your achievements. Growth isn't just about money. Sure, seeing a rise in your income is great, but growth is about much more than that. Human beings are tool-making creatures. While other species merely interact with our environment, we force the environment to serve us. That has pros and cons, of course. The whole history of humanity is a story of constantly reinventing our relationship with nature and reaching a higher plane. Ants have been making their ant farms the same way for thousands of years. Beavers have been making their beaver dams the same way for thousands of years. But in just 7,000 or 8,000 years, human beings have gone from hunter-gatherers in the woods to space travel, iPhones, and artificial intelligence. Humanity is a creative species, constantly striving to expand its population, lengthen its life expectancy, and make living conditions more comfortable. Growth defines humanity. So why does it seem like a contrary message is being blasted everywhere? Why does despair, hopelessness, and pessimism seem to be seething throughout Western civilization? Why is degrowth suddenly trendy? What has gone wrong? There's one section of the world where growth is everywhere. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres remarked, "Every time I visit China, I am stunned by the speed of change and progress. You have created one of the most dynamic economies in the world while helping more than 800 million people lift themselves out of poverty. The greatest anti-poverty achievement in history. Since 1949, 850 million people have been lifted from poverty. 70% of the world's poverty reduction has been achieved by the Communist Party of China. China has high-speed trains that can go over 200 miles an hour. China continues to send spacecraft to the far side of the moon to retrieve samples used in fusion energy research, paving the way to a higher energy source than fossil fuels. China is centralizing its fusion energy research with the goal of creating the industrial prototype fusion reactor or artificial sun by 2035. But China is not alone. Despite devastating sanctions and attempts to isolate the country, the IMF admits that Russia's economic growth continues to expand. Oil exports have held steady, and the state is using oil revenue to expand the industrial base. Russia is experiencing an agricultural boom, now the leading exporter of wheat. Russia responded to sanctions imposed in 2014 by rebuilding the farming system. The Economist proclaimed in 2018, quote, "Russia has become an agricultural powerhouse." The growth continues. By 2030, the production of Russia's agricultural sector is expected to increase by at least 1/4 compared to 2021, while exports should rise by half. The Russian president recently explained Russia is also supplying fertilizer to African countries. The explosion of growth happening in Russia and China is going global. In October 2023, a publication from Boston University described China's global infrastructure projects as "go big or go home." That seems to have been the mantra of China's decade-long effort to finance infrastructure projects around the world. An airport in Pakistan, a high-speed train line in Indonesia, a port in Ethiopia, Africa's longest suspension bridge in Mozambique. The article went on to explain between 2013 and 2021, China provided at least $331 billion in financing to an array of countries, largely in the global south. African countries alone have received $91 billion. The Center for Strategic and International Studies described Russia's expanding economic relationship with Africa. Trade revenue between Russia and African countries almost doubled from $9.9 billion in 2013 to $17.7 billion by 2021. Grain exports are of particular importance, as nearly 30% of Africa's grain supplies come from Russia. Moscow's leading trade partners in the region are countries in North Africa, particularly Egypt, Algeria, and Morocco, which together account for approximately 67% of Russia's total trade with the continent. Moscow mainly exports wheat, coal, refined petroleum, and electronics to these states, while importing fruits, sugars, and vegetables. Asil Toy of the Norwegian Nobel Institute contrasted the pessimism and confusion rising in the West with the explosion of growth and optimism happening in the East. In the West, the current issues are often seen as a time of uncertainty and fears, this agonizing over the future, and we often forget that for many others, especially on the Eurasian continent, this is a golden era. And in the Eurasian continent, we're seeing a lot of power accumulating. We're seeing roads, cities, train networks snaking through the post-Soviet wilderness and creating a fabulous amount of wealth and dynamism. And this is also happening globally. We are living through a time of great technological progress, a time of engineering marvels that have been surpassed in human history. This short booklet will help you understand the problem and what can be done about it. That's the introduction to Do You Believe in Growth? Subtitle, Why Russia and China Keep Rising While U.S. Society Stifles Innovation. And as an addendum, I do have to make a comment that yes, there is a lot of growth in China. That doesn't mean that there isn't increased pollution and environmental concerns that can come from such rapid growth. We have seen that to a certain extent here in the United States, and people have tried to write it off as some massive crisis, climate change, or whatever you want to call it. There is an issue with humans' contributions to pollution and what that can do in altering the natural environment. So that is something that is going to have to be discussed. The main point is, the fact that denial of this growth, while there is the exact opposite, degrowth in the West, and that we can see the agenda of imperialism since the 1950s, by coups, overturning governments, disrupting governments in one way or another, directly or indirectly, weakening the economies. One incident after another in Central America, South America, the Middle East, Russia, China, there's sanctions, there's embargoes, all over the world. And that is what you would call imperialism, to create degrowth in other parts of the world. And of course, it's even been done to a certain extent here domestically in the United States. It's all designed to keep those on top at the top. Whereas other parts of the world, it's very clear. In places like China and Russia, the middle class is growing and the economy is expanding. They're experiencing growth, not degrowth. Again, there's problems that come along with that. They will have to be addressed, but facts are facts. And this book helps to explain that.